We're really lucky tonight. We have two talks about the economics prize. People are always eager to hear about economics, so we've doubled the number of speakers about it. Part of the reason for this is because one of the prize winners is actually as much a mathematician as he is an economist. So the first talk is going to be by Sebastian Chauba, who is a mathematician himself. Let's see, why don't you hook yourself up here while I finish introducing you. Sebastian then will be followed by a second talk by Michael Arnold, who's from the economics department. So Sebastian will lay some of the theoretical groundwork for behind the prize, and Michael will talk more about applications, although there's some applications in Sebastian's talk as well. So Sebastian earned his PhD in mathematics at Queen's University in Canada and did postdoctoral work at UC San Diego and the University of Toronto. And then he joined our Department of Mathematical Sciences in January of 2009. His own research is in graph theory and combinatorics. And then I think we all set? Good.
Thank you.
Make sure the microphone. Yeah, good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Doran. So I'd like to thank the College of Arts and Science and Dr. Doran for giving me this chance to talk to you about the work of Lloyd Shapley that has earned him the Nobel Prize in Economics. And I would like to thank you for staying up at 9 p.m. for a talk in mathematics. This is the largest audience I've had for a math talk in this time slot. So you are very brave. So thank you very much. So the Nobel Prize in Economics was awarded to two researchers, so to Alvin Roth and Lloyd Shapley. Now, one of them did the theoretic part, and one of them did the practical work. So I will talk about the theoretic part of this work, and this was done by Lloyd Shapley. So the citation for the Nobel Prize in Economics states that this was awarded for the theory of stable allocations and the practice of market design. So what Lloyd Shapley did the theory of stable allocations, and what Alvin Roth did was understood very well this theory and went on to apply it to numerous situations, and he actually ended up getting important applications that you'll see in Dr. Arnold's talk after mine. So before I tell you what Shapley's contribution was, let me tell you a few things about his personal story. So he was born in 1923 in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He was son of Martha Betts and a famous astronomer, Harlan Shapley, who actually measured the size of Milky Way, among other things. In 1943, Shapley went to Harvard to start an undergraduate degree in mathematics. And the same year, he was drafted in the army in the Second World War. So he was involved in the Second World War between 1943 and 1945. He earned a bronze medal for his work decoding some Soviet codes. This was happening in China in 1943. After the war ended in 1945, he went back to Harvard and he finished his degree in 1949. After that, in 48. So after that, he worked for a year at Rand Corporation and went to Princeton for a PhD in mathematics under the supervision of Albert Tucker. Albert Tucker, among his students, are David Gale, who's going to be involved in the algorithm that I'm going to present, which is called the Gale-Shapley algorithm, which is actually the main reason why Shapley got the Nobel Prize. And among other students of Albert Tucker is also John Nash. So Tucker had very, very strong students. After he graduated in 53, so his PhD thesis in 53 was in game theory, which is an important area of which lies at the crossroads of mathematics, economics, and computer science. And this field of game theory was studied by John von Neumann and Morgenstern. And what Shapley did, he laid the foundation of what is called cooperative game theory, in which you have n agents that are interested in forming coalitions, and at the end they have to figure out what the payoff should be after the coalitions that they make, and so on. There's a different area of game theory which is called non-cooperative game theory, and that's the area in which for which John Nash earned the Nobel Prize. So. Now, after getting his PhD, he went to Princeton. He worked at Princeton for a year, and then he went to Rand Corporation, and since 1981 is a professor at UCLA. Now, the more detailed citation about Lloyd Shapley's contribution, for which he earned the Nobel Prize, reads like this. Now, again, it's 9 o'clock in the evening, and you might not want to read the full citation, and so I highlighted the key points of it. So the key points are his contribution in cooperative game theory. So according to Albert Tucker, he considered Lloyd Shapley as the biggest name in cooperative game theory after John von Neumann. So that was he basically, Shapley laid the foundation for this cooperative game theory. Now, the citation mentions two things, something about stable matchings and something about Gale-Shapley algorithm. So what I'll try to do is, for the remaining part of my talk, to explain to you what are stable matchings and what is this Gale-Shapley algorithm, how does it work. It's something very simple, very elementary, but it has amazing and deep consequences. It actually, you can say without any exaggeration that it actually saves lives. And you'll see later on in Dr. Arnold's talk how this happens. So if you prepare for this talk, you can find your favorite search engine and use the Scholar version of it. And you can look up Lloyd Shapley. And the paper that ranks at top is called College Admissions and the Stability of Marriage. And this is a paper by David Gale, who also was a student of Albert Tucker, and Lloyd Shapley. Now, what is college admission and what is the stability of marriage? So, college admissions could mean many things, including this one. This is a joke, like maybe it's not that funny at 9 o'clock, but anyways. So college admission, this is the problem that they actually consider in their paper. So their paper by Gale and Shapley appeared in 1962 in the American Mathematical Monthly, which is a journal that presents elementary results. Elementary means something that can be understood by a high school student or an undergraduate student. It does not mean easy. So elementary doesn't mean necessarily that something is easy. And presents results that are elementary, deep, and are very well presented. So the scenario is you have N students, you have M colleges. Each college has a student quota that they can admit into their ranks. And now each student has a certain preferences for colleges, and each college has a certain preferences for students. What you want to do, you want to assign the students to the colleges in such a way that this assignment is stable. Now, to tell you what stable is, it's easier to tell you what unstable is, what not stable is. So unstable means that there are two students, let's call them Alice and Bob, and there are two colleges, Yale and Harvard, such that Alice is assigned to Harvard and Bob is assigned to Yale, but Alice prefers Yale to Harvard and Yale prefers Alice to Bob. So the pair between Alice and Yale could present an instability because they would like to switch their options. Now, stability of marriage, again, that could mean many things, and maybe this is one of them. But in their paper is this situation, this problem, which is actually a simplification of the college student situation. So you have N men, N women, and each man and each woman, they have a preference for the person of opposite sex. So basically what they do, they rank the people of opposing sex from in the order of preference, and there are no ties. Okay, so basically a man will have, someone will be his first choice, someone will be his second choice, and so on. So that happens for every man and for every woman. And now the problem is, can you create what is called a stable matching? And again, to tell you what stable matching, it's easier to say what unstable matching is. An unstable matching is a set of n pairs of men and women, such that every man and every woman is exactly in one of these pairs, such that there is a pair of men and a woman that are not assigned to each other, but prefer each other more than they prefer their actual partners. So they would prefer to switch, elope, and do other things. Anyway, so the question is, for any set of preferences, is there a stable matching? Is there such a thing? Stable marriage. So these are the two problems that were considered by Gale and Shapley. The paper, I have it with me, it's only 6 pages long, and if you have 20 minutes, you can understand the contents of the paper, how it works, proofs and everything in 20 minutes. It's a beautiful, beautiful result, and the exposition is amazing. Now, let me give you an example of an unstable matching. So let's say we have 2 men and 2 women. If you're a mathematician in the crowd, let's call the men B1 and B2, and let's call the woman A and J. If you're not a mathematician, then you know how to call them. And so each of them have preferences. So let's say B1 prefers A over J, and the other one, Billy Bob, prefers, again, Angelina over Jennifer, and so on. So the first is the first preference, and then the second preference. Now, the following is an unstable matching, because in this situation, if we look at the pair of Brad and Angelina, they're not paired together, but they prefer each other more than they prefer their current partners. So that's what an unstable marriage is, matching is. So that's a simple example. Now, the Gale-Shapley algorithm, this is actually the meat of the story. It works as follows. It's a very simple algorithm, and it does what people do in real life, in a sense. So it works in rounds. So let's say we start with men as proposers. And at the beginning of each round, so let's say we start at the beginning. The beginning, each man looks at the list of his of preferences and picks the highest, the woman that they prefer the most, and they propose to that woman. Now, if in this situation every man and every woman are involved in exactly one such a proposal, then you're done. That's going to be pretty much a stable marriage. But it could happen, and we'll see an example shortly. It could happen that several men will propose to the same woman. In that case, what's going to happen is that the woman is going to look at the list of her proposal, and it's just going to reject everybody except the one that is ranked highest in her list of preferences. But she does not accept that person definitively. She just accepts it for now, and she might reject it later if somebody better comes along. So that's how it goes in rounds until everybody is paired with one man and one woman. So that's basically the idea. Now, I'll give you a short example. Let's say we have the men listed as alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and we have the woman listed as A, B, C, D. And now, if we go on the rows, so all these pairs, if I look in the first coordinate, that tells me the preferences of the men, the men in that corresponding row. So if I look at the row of alpha, a 1 here tells me that A is his first preference, B is his second preference, C is the third, and D is the fourth. If I look at gamma, for gamma, B is the first choice, C is the second, A is the third, and D is the fourth. Now, for women, the second coordinate will tell me their preferences. So if I look at woman A, gamma is her first choice, delta is her second, alpha third, and fourth. This is fourth. Now, how does this work with this configuration? How does the algorithm work? So in the first step, the men, so let's say we have the men as proposer, they're going to propose to the top woman in their list. So if we look at each row, for alpha, that top woman is A, for beta is also A, for gamma is B, and for delta is C. So that's basically what they do. You have this proposal. Now, if you look on each column, A has 2 proposals. So what's going to happen? A is going to look at the proposal that she received from alpha and beta, and she sees that alpha is ranked higher than beta in her list, so she's basically going to reject beta. So she crosses off beta off her list, and then she just keeps alpha. Now, obviously, at this point, we're not done because it's not a matching. Not every man is paired with a woman, so we have to continue. So at the next step, so I'll do this, the first 2 steps are done already there. At this step, what we have is beta is going to have to propose to the second choice that he has. So he proposed already to A that rejected him, and now he looks on the list, and he has to is going to propose to B. And it goes on. B has 2 proposals. B looks on her, the people that proposed to her, beta and gamma, and is going to reject gamma. And it keeps going like this. So I'm not going to go slowly step by step. It will take a little bit, and I'll just show you the run of the algorithm. So it goes like this. And in 10 steps, actually, you end up with this configuration here, which is basically the stable matching. So this is the stable matching in which gamma is paired with A, alpha is paired with C, beta is paired with D, and delta is paired with B. And that's a stable matching. So that's basically how Gale-Shapley algorithm works. You can program this very, very easily, or you can just do it by hand. Now, what Gale and Shapley did, also you probably ask yourself, well, is it different if the woman proposed first instead of the men? And it turns out that it's different. So if the men propose, then they're going to end up with their best possible match in the universe of all stable matchings, and the women are going to end up with their worst possible match in the universe of stable matching. So in a sense, it pays to be bold. So it pays to actually make the proposals first, not to wait to be proposed to. Now, this theory, it's a beautiful theory, and nowadays things are used in online auctions. So Google, Yahoo, and all these companies are very interested in algorithms for such for online advertising. It's used also in traffic routing on the internet. The Akamai company is using a version of this stable matching to send packages to various servers. And if you're interested in learning more about it, there are many articles on the internet. There are several books. Oops, sorry. Oh, I think I clicked something wrong. Maybe I'll save it here. Everything was going so well. Okay. So there are books. If you're a mathematician, you can read Matching Theory by Lovaas and Plummer. If you're in economics or mathematician, computer science, or even if you're any person interested in this theory, you can read this beautiful book by Roth, which is the person that Dr. Arnold is going to talk about, and Oliveira Sotomayor about two-sided matching. And also people in computer science have written books about this, stable matching, and the book by Don Knuth, which is also very nice. Now I will end with the conclusions from the actual paper by Gale and Shapley. Again, there's a lot of text there, and I highlighted something that I found very interesting and amusing at the same time. So they argue here that the person who is steeped in reality may notice that the scenario that they describe might not be a real-life situation, and it belongs to what they call the world of mathematical make-believe. And nevertheless, the authors of this paper believe that some of the ideas that were introduced here are not just useful for as an interesting mathematics problem, but they will have other application in admission problems and so on. So you'll see in the next talk the amazing applications of this algorithm. Thank you very much.
Any questions? So they have as you say, a mathematical make-believe version of stability. Because I noticed, if we go back, where's? Yeah, I need to get to the final solution here. Yeah. Can you go forward on that? Yeah. Okay.
So you go. This algorithm goes like 10 rounds. So and it ends up here.
So I noticed that beta is paired with D. And if I go back to the original rankings, they each get their last choice.
Oh, beta gets her last choice, his last choice, but the other ones get their third.
No, right. But D and beta are paired. They're like maximally dissatisfied.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, in this case, they just get unlucky. But yeah, I mean, this is again.
It's stable as long as there's only 4 men and 4 women. But if a 5th man or a 5th woman never shows up, right? They're almost certainly going to be done.
Yeah, well, if you have the same number of men and women, by this algorithm, you're going to end up with something that is stable. Now, stable does not mean that everybody will be happy. It means that in that last situation, there is no actual switch that is possible for a man or a woman to get something better. So that's what's stable. At the end of the day, you have men and women, trying to match with their best possible match. It has to be somebody is not going to be happy. But this is somehow, I think, in a sense, the fairest solution to this problem.
Indeed, and I think we'll see in the next talk that it's a really good solution in many cases as well. Great. Thank you very much, Sebastian. Thanks. Yeah. All right, the last talk of the evening is the pièce de résistance. Michael Arnold from the Department of Economics is going to give a talk on the second half of the Economics Prize. He is an associate professor in the Department of Economics, and he's also the faculty director of the University Honors Program. Michael joined our faculty in 1992 after completing his PhD in economics at UCLA. His research is focused on many topics related to this Nobel Prize, including optimal design of selling strategies and market institutions in environments characterized by buyer and seller search frictions and asymmetric information, a less mathematically idealized thing than we've just been hearing about. Most recently, his research has been exploring optimal pricing and advertising strategies in Internet markets, which you've just heard is closely related to this prize. Let's see, I need to get your slides up here. There you go. You going to use this, or?
Yeah, I'll stay up here. So
Okay, good.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Doug. So I didn't put a picture of Al Roth up here, and I think I should have. When you see Shapley, who was teaching one economics course in non-cooperative game theory, or sorry, cooperative game theory when I was a student at UCLA, he looks a lot more sinister than Al Roth. Al Roth is a very jovial guy, so not all economists look quite like Shapley does. Shapley's really a mathematician, right? So when I talk to my graduate students, the Nobel Prize winner I uphold as the model is John Nash. Although not really an economist, he won the Nobel Prize in economics with a 7-page dissertation. Al Roth, on the other hand, as we'll see in a little bit of his history, born in 1951, he actually dropped out of high school. So I don't use him as a model for my graduate students. He said he got bored. He started attending classes on the weekend at Columbia, finished his degree there in operations research in 1971 at the age of 20, so apparently dropping out of high school didn't do any harm. He then finished his PhD three years later at Stanford, went on to Illinois, then Pitt, and then Harvard, where he spent most of his career. Most recently, he's taken emeritus status at Harvard and is now back with a full appointment at Stanford, returning to his graduate school roots. So I think it's helpful to put a little bit of context, just like Scylla did with the prize in medicine. About every 5 years, the Nobel Committee tends to award a prize in economics for people who are doing microeconomic theory around market design and optimal market structure and institutions. So it goes back to Merlis and Vickrey, who did a lot of their pioneering work in the early 60s, through the others listed here, and ultimately with Shapley and Roth for this theory of stable allocations and the practice of market design. So I want to talk a little bit about what market design means in the context of Al Roth. Early in his career, Roth followed the pattern similar to most of the prize winners here, in that his research was what I would characterize as theoretical work exploring the mathematical underpinnings of both cooperative and non-cooperative games. However, one of the sources of frustration and disappointment in the early use of game theory and economics was the disconnect between theoretical discoveries, which were typically based on simplified market models, and actual real-world market structures and outcomes. For example, equilibrium existence theorems verify that an equilibrium of a modeled market exists, but they typically do not provide any clear insight into the economic properties of that equilibrium outcome. In the early 1980s, Al Roth began to respond to this gap in economic research by shifting his focus from, as he characterized it, theory about simple markets to an engineering approach that combines theory and applied market design to create workable institutions for complex markets. And Roth has been a pioneer in this arena ever since. And while many of his insights have been developed in the context of specific markets and the complexities of those individual markets, as I'll talk about in a few minutes, his work also led to a higher level framework for evaluating the extent to which market failure is likely, as well as evaluating the magnitude of the economic inefficiency such market failure might generate, and the key problems that matching algorithms must address in order to generate stable and economically efficient outcomes. In its simplest form, this framework is based on three key market characteristics: thickness, congestion, and safety. Thickness dictates that to be economically efficient, a market must attract a sufficient proportion of potential market participants to come together and transact. And much of Roth's work has characterized what we mean by a sufficient proportion. When is thick enough? Secondarily, the market must then overcome the congestion that is often inherent with thickness by providing sufficient time or by making transactions fast enough for market participants to consider enough possible alternative transactions to arrive at a satisfactory outcome, as we kind of saw in the matching model. It took 10 rounds for that stable match to complete. If we have a market design that allows 3 rounds, we may not get a stable solution. Finally, the market must be safe in the sense that it's simple and that it's preferable for candidates to participate in the market instead of transacting outside the market, and the participants have an incentive to reveal their true preferences rather than acting strategically in ways that reduce overall welfare. In game theoretic terms, the market must be strategy-proof. This general framework is relevant to a wide range of markets. However, some of the most difficult problems Roth has addressed involve optimal design of markets in which the allocation of resources is explicitly not determined by prices. So 30 seconds of introductory microeconomics. Economics is the study of the allocation of scarce resources, and economists are really happy when we have competitive markets in which that allocation is determined by prices. As we get away from perfectly competitive scenarios, the allocation problem becomes inherently more difficult, and as we get into markets with no pricing whatsoever, that problem is further complicated. So a couple of examples. In the early 1940s, the process for matching new doctors with residency programs began to unravel as hospitals, in their efforts to get the best residents, were offering positions to medical students as much as 2 years before those students would graduate, well before the students' skills were fully known and before the students' interest in various specialties was fully determined. Clearly, this would be inefficient, and it was also making the market increasingly thin and disaggregated. An agreement in 1945 by medical schools to not release student information before a specified date resolved this problem to some extent, but created a congestion problem that led hospitals to make so-called exploding offers, which required medical students to decide which residency they would take in a very short time period without the opportunity to consider alternatives. The market was now congested. Remember the framework. We need a thick market, but also a market that is not congested. This led to the adoption of an algorithm in 1952, similar to the one developed by Shapley and Gale. Roth's work in 1984 demonstrated that the match generated by this so-called National Resident Matching Program was stable in the sense of Shapley and Gale under conditions which prevailed in the 1950s. In particular, nearly all medical students were male and either single or the sole head of a household, so the student was like the husband in the matching model we just saw, and the hospital were like the prospective wives. However, new complexities such as second-year residency specializations, which require a first-year residency as a prerequisite, as well as the growing number of married medical school couples with preferences for geographically close residency programs, had reduced the effectiveness of the original algorithm by the 1980s. Roth's work has shown that with such complementarities across different residency programs, no algorithm exists that chooses a stable matching, if a stable matching actually exists, and no algorithm will make it a dominant strategy for all agents to state their true preferences. So there's no safe algorithm. However, applicant proposing algorithms in which the students make proposals or propose their preferences first, produce dominant strategy outcomes in which revealing preferences is optimal for the applicants, for the medical students, and the set of outcomes in which strategic manipulation by hospitals is optimal is quite small. A core convergence result demonstrates that the algorithm leads to nearly stable outcomes. Roth then went on to test these results both empirically and through economic experiments and laboratory settings. By the way, we should put in a little plug here. Laboratory settings similar to the experimental economics lab the University of Delaware has down in Townsend Hall. Roth demonstrated that the modified algorithm he proposed is both stable and safe, and his algorithm has been used by the residency matching program ever since. A second example of markets to which Roth has applied this theory is the market for kidneys. In the U.S., there are currently over 70,000 patients on the kidney waiting list. Approximately 11,000 cadaver kidney transplants are performed each year, and approximately 5,000 patients die each year while awaiting transplants. Demand for kidney transplants greatly exceeds supply. However, monetary compensation for live kidneys is illegal. As an aside, this raises another issue on which Roth has made substantial contributions. How can we design markets when pricing of resources is repugnant? An example of such markets in its infancy was the market for life insurance, where it was viewed as repugnant for firms to be making bets on when people would die and to be profiting from those bets. The life insurance market last year collected over $12 billion in premiums, by the way. So in addition to the fact that kidneys cannot be purchased, a willing uncompensated donor of a live kidney, such as a spouse, may not be a biologically compatible match with the recipient. And until we get kidneys growing in petri dishes, this creates problems, right? In response to this real-world problem, in which existing legal markets are very thin, Roth has shown how a chain of incompatible donor pairs can be linked to create to create stable matchings between compatible donors across the chain. His work also has shown how to incorporate altruistic donors, those donating just out of the goodness of their heart, into the exchange in a way that increases total matches and is more effective than the previous practice of utilizing altruistic donors as a substitute for cadaver donors. While Roth demonstrated that a theoretical solution to the kidney exchange problem existed, a practical problem of simultaneous operations remain. Legally, these operations need to be conducted simultaneously because, for example, if one donor makes a donation to an unrelated match and that participant happens to die in the operation process, then the match donor who was willing to donate to that person but who's not a match and has been matched with a different donor may decide that they want to change their mind after the operation failed. So these operations have to occur simultaneously, and that creates problems for hospitals because if we're going to have 2 donors, we need 4 operating rooms. If we're going to have 3 donors, 6 operating rooms, and so on. Well, Roth has subsequently shown that a 4-way exchange can accommodate nearly every match possible in a large database of people. So only 8 operating rooms are needed to create stable and nearly economically efficient matching outcomes. As a result of Roth's work, an increasing number of doctors and hospitals are participating in the kidney exchange program. Walter Reed became the first military hospital to join the exchange program earlier this month, and there's movement towards a national kidney exchange program. One last example I'll mention is the school matching problem. So, for example, in the city of New York, there are over 90,000 high school students who must be matched to approximately 500 high schools. The process begins with students demonstrating their choice. Roth has demonstrated that major problems in that market arose because the market is overly congested. New York City tried to implement this system with 3 rounds. As a result, nearly 30,000 students would remain unmatched at the end of the process every year. They had to be matched administratively by hand at a later time. Since Roth's algorithm has been implemented in New York City, that number has been reduced to approximately 3,000 matches having to be done administratively at the end of the process. So those are 3 examples of markets. Actually, in the last one, I should note, might be a model for Newark to use given the recent controversy around the Newark Charter School. So those are 3 examples of markets in which prices are not used, in some cases because there's unwillingness to use prices, actually in most of those cases because there's an unwillingness to use prices to allocate the resources that the market is trying to allocate. I should have been scrolling through here, I guess. So these are some papers, highlights of some papers that Roth has written on each of the areas I just spoke of. Of course, his work he's extended to other markets as well. The market for federal judicial law clerks is also one in which these matching models can be used. Roth has looked at those. And more recently at the job market for new economists. which has no problems with thickness but does have problems with congestion, and the American Economic Association is implementing aspects of Roth's algorithm to make our job market more efficient. Repugnance, I mentioned around the market for kidneys and how we can best allocate resources there. Roth has also made major contributions in areas that weren't directly acknowledged by the Nobel Committee, including experimental economics and using a laboratory setting to test how our theories might work when put into practice, e-commerce, which was mentioned earlier, and lastly, no need to fear on the universities of America. Al Roth's algorithms are also being used to make sure our sororities result in stable and efficient matches as well. So I think this is a very exciting prize because of the combination of really good theory. Al Roth, initially is trained as a theorist, and he often has commented about his interest in bringing what he calls engineering to economics. Engineers have great tools for looking at very complex but specific settings and bringing those tools to bear on solving problems. That's really been Al Roth's approach to economics on the theory side, and he's combined that with really great, interesting market applications. So I think it's a prize well deserved. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Are there questions from the audience?
No, I don't know the score of the game, but that's probably the question some of you are.
So if I understood you, you said that in the medical residency match, there's very few opportunities for the schools to use strategies to game the system, if you will, or get their first choices at the expense of...
Since the algorithm has, since Roth, and even starting back in the 50s with that, once that algorithm was implemented, the way the program would work is that medical schools would submit their preferences, students would submit their preferences, and then essentially what the process Sebastian described would be implemented. You'd start with the students and see what their preferences were and match them, and then you'd give the medical schools the opportunity to accept or reject what the students proposed, and then you go to the second round and so on.
So one thing that may or may not fit into that model is the fact that in reality the students are doing interviews with the schools, and there's a lot of direct interaction where they're trying to feel each other out about will I get into your school if you admit me or if you choose me, and the school's trying to guess whether the student will rank them highly or not before they make up their list.
Yes. Yeah, so I'll admit some ignorance here. I know in the 1998 paper, Al Roth has looked at exactly this issue of the interviews and how that impacts the market. And it actually turns out to play an important role because it limits, not so much from the student side, because students can express preferences even where they don't interview, although the chances of a match are unlikely. But apparently the nature of that interview process actually, by limiting the number of students to which the hospitals are exposed, reduces the incentives for gaming on their side. So it actually improves the matching process in that way. So.
Any last questions? Just one more.
Can these algorithms still be applied in scenarios like Australia where they have an opt-out system of kidney donation where everyone is a donor and then people have to actually opt out of donating kidneys?
So the way the algorithms would work in that case is in the kidney exchange program, essentially in the U.S. system, people have all volunteered to donate a kidney, provided the person they want to get a kidney is also going to get one, right, through a different match. And the opt-out system, I guess the way that, I haven't thought about it, the way it would work is that everyone is available to donate a kidney. If you're asked, at that point you can say, no, I don't want to. So clearly that would reduce the quality of matchings. I think if the pool remains large enough, you would still get stable matchings in the end. But I don't really know how that would work. I haven't seen a paper that looks at that.
All right, I want to thank all the speakers again. I want to thank you for coming tonight and for staying for the duration. We tried a new format this year than we have in previous years. This is the first time we've done it in the evening, and also the first time that we've done all 6 prizes in a single session. So if you have any comments on that or any feedback about which parts of that you like and which parts we should change for next year, please let me know. Again, let's thank all our speakers one more time.